Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate not having to talk in front of an empty stage, so I very much appreciate that. My name is Linda Lau, and I'm an instructor for the Older Adults program. I teach theater for them, so this is actually a very special treat for me to be able to talk about something else today. And today, I'm going to spend a few minutes with you sharing two international films directed by female directors. They are The Simple Life and The Second Mother. When I first saw these two films, what struck me about them, in addition to their similarities in subject matter, was that these films are very understated. Both films focus on everyday life, things that happen all around us, but perhaps go unnoticed by many. In the next 40 minutes, I'm going to take you along a journey where I will provide you a brief synopsis. I'm assuming that most of you haven't watched these films before, right? Okay, then I'll discuss some cinematic techniques as well as themes. And finally, I'll wrap the discussion up by describing how A Simple Life and The Second Mother contribute to making a cultural impact in society. And it's really my hope that after this talk that you'll have a better appreciation for film in general, and more specifically, that you'll be encouraged to watch more international films. So Simple Life was directed by Anne Huey, and she's a veteran director in Hong Kong. She's very well known. She's directed a wide variety of films, including martial arts, comedy, thrillers, autobiography, and she currently probably has about 30 plus films in her repertoire. The screenplay was written by Roger Lee and Susan Chan. Although Huey didn't write the screenplays herself, she convinced Roger Lee to write the story, which is actually based on his real-life relationship with his maid. A Simple Life won many different awards, including Best Actress at the Venice Film Festival, and Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Director at both the Golden Horse Awards and at the Hong Kong Film Awards. So the story of A Simple Life is pretty simple. It's about these two characters. We have Paulo, who's the servant, and Roger, who's her employer. And the story follows the last few years of her life. Paulo has been a servant for Roger's family for 4 generations, spanning 60 years. So pretty much her whole entire adult life has been with this one family. And when the film begins, Roger is the only person left in Hong Kong. The rest of his family, including his siblings and mother, are living overseas. Roger is a 40-something-year-old movie producer who travels regularly to China for work. He is not married and has no children. And Paulo is also unmarried and has no children. She spends her days cleaning and cooking for Roger and taking care of the house when he is away. But one day, she suffers a stroke. And when that happens, Roger offers to hire a helper to take care of her, but she insists that she doesn't want help. Instead, she wants to live in a senior facility. He doesn't protest her decision and finds a nursing home that she can move into, and he even pays for the cost of living there. At this point, Roger begins to take on the job of being caregiver to Paulo, and the roles are reversed. In addition to making regular visits to the senior home and even letting others consider him Paulo's godson, even though they have no relationship in that way, he really begins to develop a deeper relationship with her. He takes her on walks. He takes her out to meals. And he even takes her out to one of his movie premieres. From these interactions, Paulo and Roger really begin building a real relationship, one that is mutually beneficial for the both of them. And at the senior home, Paulo also begins to form friendships with the other residents. When her health continues to deteriorate, other members of Roger's immediate family begin to spend time with her, but it's still Roger who's the primary caregiver. Eventually, she is hospitalized, and because she has no other living family member alive, immediate or extended, Roger is left with the decision to take her off life support. So you might notice from this synopsis that not much happens in the story, right? There isn't any conflict. It's really just a story about this woman living her the last few years of her life. So what's so remarkable about this film? Why do I think you should go and watch it after this talk? Well, to help us understand this, let's take a look at what Roger Ebert, our favorite American critic, has to say about this. He says, "A Simple Life paints portraits of two good people in gentle humanist terms. It filled me with an unreasonable affection for both of them." I would say that this is a pretty accurate description about the experience of the film. This film, it can be a real tearjerker, and it draws audiences into stories by showing us two imperfect human beings trying to find a connection in a very lonely world. And it's not done in a very heavy-handed way either. It sort of sneaks up on you. And one of the strategies that this film does to create this unreasonable affection is by pairing intimacy with distance. And I'll show you some visual examples right now. So you'll notice that this is a towel here in the market. And you'll see that she's seen at a distance. We don't quite get a very good, clear picture of her here. And here she is in her room. It's actually also the laundry room. Okay, and here is Roger at work. If you notice the door frame on the left side. Here he is finding out about the senior facility, and we see him through a glass. Here they are having a meal, and the camera seems to be at another table. And here she is walking in the senior facility, going to the bathroom. And I think that's some sort of vent that we're looking at her through. Here's the senior facility again from the window. And here is Roger at the hospital. So this kind of obscured framing of images helps viewers see these very intimate moments, and sometimes heartbreaking, without being fully immersed in it. Okay, so the next thing I want to discuss is the theme of food and eating. And this is a very big theme in the film, and images of food are found throughout, and sometimes we even get close-ups of them. This is ox tongue, which I had to explain to some of my former students that this is considered a delicacy. People want to eat this. This is not considered as a bad thing. And we get a close-up of this. And we don't get too many close-ups in the film, so it's really interesting to see that this particular dish gets a close-up. Here she is buying groceries, and she's picking garlic. And this is the unappetizing meal that she gets at the senior home. Here are people delivering fresh vegetables. And here's the ox tongue that's completely cooked and ready to be eaten. And this is a minor character, but in this scene, he orders about half the menu, and he also still wants to go have sushi afterwards. So there's this idea of abundance throughout the film. So while Atol's duties over the last 60 years as live-in maid have included cooking, cleaning, and taking care of children, cooking is what her character is most associated with. Atol takes great care in preparation of her food for her employers. She always seeks out the freshest ingredients, and she is so obsessed about the quality of food that it's a running joke with the grocery store clerks. She is recognized as a very talented cook by others, and many characters associate her as a purveyor of food. For example, even the minor characters think of food items when they think of Atoll. Here you see, this is Roger's friend. They give her a call, and immediately they tell her about, oh, your stuffed duck dish. And here's Roger's mom remembering the fruit juice that she made for her when she was sick. And here's a time when they recall the first refrigerator they got, and specifically the watermelon is associated with it. It's very positive for them. And here is Roger's sister, and she only shows up a couple of times, and this is only one scene where she speaks. And the one thing that she says is that, oh, I remember her getting a Coke for you. So food also appears as a way to trace the dramatic action in the story. And the quality of food and eating improves or worsens depending on Atoll's health. Immediately after her first stroke, we see her eating unappetizing food. She doesn't look very happy here, right? At the senior facility. And when she goes to lunch for the first time at the senior facility, this is what she sees. Women and men with sippy cups. Here, some of them have to be fed, and they're also wearing a bib here. So this idea of food and eating becomes this kind of grotesque idea, not so pleasurable anymore. And throughout the film, Roger and Atoll, really, they never have any kind of argument or disagreement. But the one time that they do, and they're both very, very emphatic about it, is when he takes her to get false teeth. He thinks, for him, it's very important, and she just doesn't want him to waste the money. So for the first time, we see them have a little fight. And even when she's sick, and on the hospital bed here, she's thinking about salted eggs. And here she can no longer walk anymore, and she's still dreaming about her roast goose. And at the very end, we see Roger here. He is eating out of a styrofoam container, and I think he's eating noodles. So it's really a far cry from what he had before when Atoll was in his household. Okay, now I'm going to show you two clips to see, since I've shown you some still images, I want you to get a sense of how food is integrated and really the pacing and the style of the film. And I want you to pick one of these things to observe, either camera movement, sound, or body language. You can observe all three, but it's usually easier if you just focus on one to get the full effect. Okay, this first scene takes place before she has a stroke.
Gina. 今次寫幾耐啊
2日。喂，好耐冇食牛脷喎。
嚇？
好耐冇食牛脷。
你又想再通波仔啊？嚇？都好耐冇食啦，今日咪食咯。今日都俾你食咗蟹蓋啦，唔好食牛脷啦，唔好食啦，唔食。
我中意滷水啊。
Okay. Did everyone take notes? Okay, good. So let's watch a second scene, and this is after she has her stroke and they begin building a relationship.
點解你喺度㗎？乜你喺度啊？
你知道你翻嚟啊？我一早俾咗鎖匙，佢自己開門入嚟。咕嚕咕嚕。
你咁叻㗎，識開門㗎？你點解咁叻嘅？你睇唔睇到我對拖鞋仲喺度啊？睇唔睇到啊？玻璃，你唔好走呢！你唔好走呢！你要走，你要走，你要走係嘛？都係要幫你揾翻個工人先得啦。
喂，桃姐嚟過嚟，你咪搞啦，嚟坐呢度。豬喵
咩嚟㗎？
生熟薏米、洋薏米、淡竹葉、燈芯花，4碗煲埋2碗，而家咧飲1碗，等下拎1碗走嚇。
咁樣。生熟薏米羹係嘛？咁熱嘅糊仔咁嘅？
你係要咁嘅咩？只需要1個2個啊
？2個。
Okay, for the sake of time, I'm going to stop that scene. But I think everyone got a clear idea of the two changes, right, from those two scenes. It's very, very stark. In fact, it's almost startling to watch them side by side. So some of the things that you might have noticed with camera movement is that the first one is static, right? And the second one is moving, almost like a handheld camera. And in terms of sound, we just hear more sounds in the second one, right? There's a lot more dialogue. But in the first clip, you probably noticed some slurping, right? And even the cat crunching its food, dishes and walking around. And finally, when we look at the body language, what do we see? We see two people who are so physically apart, literally come together closely. For Otto, food isn't something that's just important to her. It's actually an essential part of her identity. And not only is she recognized for it, but her cooking is really the one area of her life where she has control over. In fact, she's so sure of herself that when her boss, Roger's mom, comes to visit her at the home, she brings her some bird nest soup, which is considered a delicacy. It's something that's very expensive, and she makes it by herself. Guess what she does? She criticizes it. Yep, exactly. She says it's too salty. And it's just really one of the few ways that she's able to show that she has control and power in her life. And it's really seen as a very positive thing. And when she can no longer perform her duties, she tries to help Roger find a new domestic worker. Let's just say she's not very impressed.
我先聲明啊，危險核突嘅嘢我唔做㗎，我唔摸槍，唔使試坑，亦都唔話抽油煙機，亦都唔鬥男人底褲，講明服侍一個就一個。你請客人翻屋企完咗嗰啲騷糟事，我更加唔會理佢。
我咧就做 OL 㗎，翻中環添啊！早嗰2年，如果唔係公司執咗笠，一路都揾唔翻，我都唔使焗住再培訓。
咁你用咩煲飯㗎？
煲飯啊，梗係用電飯煲㗎啦，阿婆婆。
阿小姐，煲飯咧就用瓦煲煲至香嘅。咦，你知唔知邊度買游水嘅紅衫魚啊？游水嘅黃花魚都有得買㗎喎。遲頭咧淨係食清蒸游水海魚。嗱，佢響香港嗰陣咧就煲老火湯過佢飲，隔日咧就整啲花膠啊、鮑魚啊、海參啊咁，係咁多嘅啫。
你阿事頭咁巴閉啊，睇怕都好難揾人服侍佢啊！你就唔好嘥人時間啦。
你揀新抱咩？土姐，你契仔出幾多錢啊？不如我落咗班去幫佢做兼職吧啦。
Okay, and the last woman was actually the supervisor at her senior facility. So that's why she's so nice and she doesn't have an attitude. So this clip is very revealing about what Atoll represents and how much the world has changed around her throughout the last 60 years. As the last of her kind, Atoll is a devoted servant whose entire life evolves around her employer. The modern day woman, as you saw from these examples, is really unwilling to do everything that she does. In fact, these women have a very strong reaction against doing housework. They see it as degrading and as really something that might be a last resort. And you might have also noticed that out of all the skills that a domestic worker should be interviewed for, the only one she cares about is about cooking, right? There's something very clever that this film does, and I'm not sure if you would be able to read it if you aren't aware of Hong Kong culture or politics, so I want to highlight that for you. And the thing is that Atoll's story is actually remarkable not only because she was a real person, but of what she symbolizes. She marks the end of an era, a shift in history. To help you understand this, I want to point out a very brief scene. I won't show it, but I'll show you the slide here. And here, these are two minor characters. And the man on the left, he only appears once in this scene. The other character is another person in the senior facility. And basically, whenever a director has a scene that doesn't make sense, that doesn't add to the plot or to the action of the story, it's good to pay attention. And what I think that the director is doing here is by showing this visual relationship here of this Southeast Asian servant with this Chinese man is really to point out how diverse Hong Kong is. Because so far we've only seen images of Chinese people. And in fact, domestic servants are primarily from Southeast Asia. And if you ever go visit Hong Kong, you'll see on a Sunday all the domestic workers out on the streets because it's their one day off and they don't want to spend it inside at their employer's house. So it's actually even a visual spectacle. So I would love to continue on this discussion on this film, but for time's sake, I'm going to move on to the next one. Okay, The Second Mother is a Brazilian film, and this was written and directed by Ana Muylaert. And this is her fourth film. This film premiered in Sundance and has won numerous awards, including the Audience Award at the Berlin Film Festival. It was also Brazil's pick for the Best Foreign Language Film for the Oscars. And Like a Simple Life, this was also inspired by real life, in this case, the director's own experience with her nanny. The story of The Second Mother focuses on Val. and she's the lady right here where you see her back. Val is one of the many servants at the wealthy household. She takes care of Barbara. Here, Barbara is at the center, who is a lifestyle guru, her husband, Dr. Carlos, who is a failed artist, and their teenage son, Fabino. Val has been working as Barbara's live-in maid for 10 years, leaving her own daughter, Jessica, in her hometown. Jessica calls her one day wanting to stay with her so she could take the qualifying exams for university. When she arrives, she is shocked to discover that her mother lives where she works. When she arrives, the two males in the family really take an interest in her right away. When she gets a tour of the property, Jessica asks if she can stay in the guest suite. And she gets a yes from Carlos and ends up staying there for a little while instead of her mother's small, unconditioned room in the back of the house. As each day passes, Jessica continues to assert herself and disregards the unwritten rules that Val follows as a domestic servant. For example, she has lunch with Carlos in the dining room while Val is serving them. She swims in their pool, which Val forbids her to do. And her actions really disrupt the dynamics of the household, and everyone is forced to reevaluate their roles in the family, especially Barbara and Val. And in the end, Val quits her job. She gets in the pool, and she moves in with Jessica. Like A Simple Life, this film also employs a technique of creating intimacy and distance. So this may not be as obvious, but I'm going to show you a few images of Val's back being turned, because that definitely alienates the audience from connecting with her. That's one way that film does this. Here she is again with her friend in the kitchen. And Val is like barely seen on the right side, and she's watching Barbara getting filmed for an interview. Okay. And the other way it does this is by having the camera static in the kitchen. So there are several scenes that take place with the camera located right here. And here, she's not in the light. Again, we see her through the dark, and this time through bars. And here she is in the hallway. Okay. And by the end, we see that she's successful because we get a very clear view of her. So surprise, surprise, another shared theme is food and eating. And here, it's more about her serving food than cooking food. Here, she's obviously dressed as a maid, and she serves food to the guests. And she even takes care of the other workers. So the who, what, when, and where of food becomes a big battleground for power in this film. And I'll show you a short clip here. I'm not sure if we have time to show it twice, but I don't think we do. So I'll just show it to you once, and I want you to pay attention to the shot size. And when I say shot size, I mean how big the characters appear on the screen. So close-up is a close-up, just the face. A medium is usually considered the half body and up, and a long shot is the whole entire body.
Val?
Bom dia.
Bom dia. Você estava com sua mãe?
Não vi ela hoje, não.
Não? Você sabe onde ela pode estar?
Deve estar dormindo.
É estranho, porque eu fui lá no quarto dela, bati, ela não respondeu. Você já comeu?
Acabei de acordar.
Você quer comer? Ó, deixa eu ver. Licença. Tem pão. Aqui, ó, tem pão branco, tem pão integral. Vou pegar um paninho pra você aqui. Senta. Você quer beber o quê?
Esse suco aí é de quê?
É lima da Pérsia.
Você não vai tomar isso aí?
Não, faço um pra você, quer?
Quero.
Tá bom? Gostou?
Gostei.
É bom, né? Faz super bem.
Ô, dona Bárbara, isso nunca me aconteceu. Acho que o despertador não tocou, eu perdi a hora completamente.
Tudo bem.
A senhora quer o quê? Uma torrada?
Não, já comi.
Não, eu vou fazer uma torrada pra senhora.
Precisa, eu já tô saindo, vai.
Pelo amor de Deus, dona Bárbara.
Ó, sua filha adorou geleia.
Olga,
Tchau.
o que é isso? Ô, Jéssica, quem é que botou a mesa do café?
Foi Bárbara.
Oxi, não é Bárbara, não é Dona Bárbara. Parece que, ó, Bárbara. E tu não pode sentar na mesa dele, não, rapaz.
Oxi, qual que é a mesa deles, não?
É essa aí.
E cadê a outra que eu não tô vendo? Vou comer em pé? Ela que mandou eu sentar aqui.
Saia daí.
Tô comendo, peraí.
Saia, Jéssica.
Tô comendo, Val. Deixa eu terminar.
Maria, vem cá, onde é que já se viu filha de empregada sentar na mesa dos patrões?
Eles não são meus patrões, não, Val.
Vem cá, Val, tu não vai me chamar de mãe, não?
Posso.
Agradecida.
Pronto, terminei.
Maria, nunca vi isso na minha vida. Tu é doido, tu não tem noção de nada. Deixa isso aí que eu lavo, vá. Vá.
Vou pro meu quarto estudar, viu?
Isso, vá.
So visually, we see, who do we see in conflict? It's Jessica and Barbara, right? Their faces and their bodies are shown up close, whereas Val and Jessica have more of an equal relationship when we get to see the two of them together and their full bodies. And did anyone notice that Barbara's back was turned a lot? So Jessica actually had the upper hand here in this little disagreement. So housework. As you could already tell, we see Val doing different types of housework, and she also cleans. Here she's vacuuming, washing windows, doing laundry. But the most important role that she has is really as caretaker for the family. As you noticed, all three members of the family have their cell phones in their hands. So they're pretty isolated from each other, and it's really Val who is the glue to all of them. And every morning she wakes Carlos up at 11 a.m. And when he's not feeling well, she checks in on him. On Barbara's birthday, Val is the only one who acknowledges her birthday, and she actually even gives her boss a present. We don't see any other characters giving her a present. And finally, there is the teenage son, Fabino. When she gets dumped by a girlfriend, of course she says, "Women are stupid." And she even praises him for his big blue eyes. And this is a really very subtle way of integrating race into the film as well. When he can't sleep, she lets him spoon with her, and that's actually why she was late to work in the earlier clip, because Fabino was sleeping with her. When he fails the exam by 2 questions, she's there to comfort him and tell him that he's smart and that she believes in him. So I want to show you one last scene here. And in this scene, the parents have discovered a stash of pot that Fabino's hidden, and they're trying to figure out what to do with it.
Eu acho que se ele falou que não é dele.
É sua, Carlos. Val, traz o sorvete, por favor. Sim, senhora. Não é sua, né?
Claro que não.
Não, a gente já fumou maconha também. Você acha que seu pai e eu, a gente nunca fumou maconha? Óbvio que eu já fumei maconha, mas eu, né?
Tá,
me enlouquecia, não fumava essa quantidade absurda.
Tá, não acredito,
Não,
então. O que eu posso fazer?
Não, não, você tá falando que não é sua, eu acredito.
Ah, você acredita que não é dele?
Ah, pois a gente tá tendo um papo legal, por que
Pois
ele...
é, eu tô dando uma oportunidade pra ele, pra gente conversar na boa. Você quer fumar maconha? Pode fumar, meu amor, mas não precisa fumar essa quantidade.
Se fosse minha, eu falava.
Às vezes algum amiguinho se botou de brincadeira.
É um amiguinho, né? Serve pra mim, por favor. Um amiguinho. Tá bom. Então você vai continuar dizendo que não é sua. Então eu vou jogar fora. Posso fazer assim? Se não é sua, não é do Carlos, também não é minha, eu vou jogar no lixo.
Não, pode jogar.
Você acha melhor?
Tá uma delícia. Tá gostando, Fabinho?
Eu vou pegar a calda pra ficar melhor. Val,
Ele falou que não.
tem calda? Pega pra mim, por favor.
Tem nada na cabeça. Janela, janelinha, porta, campainha.
Já sou um moço grande, para, Val.
Ele é muito bonitinho, ele é muito engraçadinho, ele é da vozinha dele, ele é muito bonitinho, ele é muito engraçadinho. Ah, tá, aprendeu a lavar as orelhas.
Estamos de volta com Também Quero...
Okay, so we really get to see how close they are, and I would even dare say that she coddles him. She really treats him like her son, and it's vice versa. He really feels that relationship as well. So we're a little bit short in time, so I'm going to kind of summarize the end for you. One of the reasons why both of these films are so successful is that they have nuanced characters. And I know it may appear as if Barbara is supposed to be the villain of the film, but really the actions that she takes, I would argue, is really out of self-defense. You know, she doesn't want to be a bad mother, but Jessica and Val really do things that highlight that fact, and she's really just trying to run away from that. And obviously, in A Simple Life, Roger, he starts treating his maid differently, and he never treated her poorly out of contempt or anything. It was that he was just used to it, and he never thought of her in another way, and really never thought of having her out of his life. And one of the most important things, for me anyway, when I saw these films was I thought about the cultural impact of what these films make. Why do we need to see these images? Why do we need to watch these films about these domestic workers? And one of the things that both films do is really create a positive message for the working class. And it's positive and empowering to see these role reversals, to see people make different decisions. And while these messages are positive, it does something a little different than the traditional Hollywood ending. It gives us sort of a happy ending, because Hollywood endings are about the happily ever after, right? And we don't really get that. We get an inkling of that. It sparks our imagination. But at the end of the day, we don't find out what happens to Val. We know that she quits her job, but she probably needs another job, right? And a perfect ending, she would have a job after she leaves Barbara's house, but she doesn't in this case. And I think it really encourages us to think for ourselves about what we can do and different ways that these scenarios can happen in real life, and what we can do to make a positive change in society. Great, it's 12:45 now, so we have about 12:46, 4 minutes for questions, if anyone has any questions. Yes. Okay, so the question was, if I were to pick a Hollywood movie that had similar themes to this, what movie would I pick? And I'm trying to rack my brain right now, and I don't know offhand. Did you have a suggestion? I haven't seen any that particularly grabbed my attention, but I think you're also right to say that this issue of race and class and gender, they're all really mixed in together. And I don't see them as separate. And I think that's the strength in these two films, is these directors don't treat them as separate issues. And I'll think about it for the next 3 minutes and get back to you if I can. Any other questions? That's an excellent question, by the way. Okay, then I think we are going to wrap this up, and if you stay for a few minutes, I would love to talk to you, and it might spark some recommendations for you if you want. But anyway, thank you everyone for joining me today. I'm very happy that you stayed for the whole talk. I hope you got something out of this, and the next time you look at film, you'll pay attention to some of the cinematic strategies, because it's very interesting, and it'll really help you enjoy the film a whole lot more. Okay, thank you.